He's doing that face. Chat. Have you checked out any desk PC builds lately? No, bro, I'm busy. I'll look at it some other time. I'm really busy this week. George Carlin predicted today's society in 100%. Well, he looks like a wise old man, so maybe we should listen to him more often. Looks fun. Let's watch it. Okay, I'm ready. Tried to warn you. He wasn't joking. Boom!
The best comedians don't tell jokes. They tell the truth in a way that makes you laugh instead of cry. George Carlin saw America for what it truly was, a carefully crafted lie. A lie so powerful and complex, he dedicated much of his act trying to pull the wool from his fans' eyes.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
And the irony of people laughing, looking back at it now, is just hilarious.
You and I are not in the big club. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged, and nobody seems to notice.
Despite George spending the better half of his career trying to warn the American people about the powers that be, nothing changed. Some argue it may have gotten worse. Today, many people believe that stand-up comedy is being overly controlled by political correctness.
It sure as fuck is.
Whereas others think that artists and performers should avoid sharing their political opinions and just stick to their craft. But everyone wanted to hear what George Carlin had to say regarding religion, race, war, prisons, the death penalty, climate change, human rights, abortion, sex work, feminism, toxic masculinity, PTSD, voter integrity, censorship, capitalism, communism, materialism, and imperialism. No matter how polarizing the subject was, George Carlin spoke his mind freely, and the people could not get enough of it. Now today you have people on both sides of the political spectrum analyzing his old material and insisting that they know his heart and mind enough to say, oh, he would definitely agree with me on this, when in reality, he likely would not agree with you. Or them.
Now there's one thing you might have noticed I don't complain about. Politicians. Everybody complains about politicians. Everybody says they suck. They come from American parents and American families. This is the best we can do, folks. Maybe it's not the politicians who suck. Maybe something else sucks around here. Like the public.
This video is going to be a roller coaster. Just when you think George Carlin is speaking for you and aligning with your moral compass, he will say something that you entirely disagree with. The good news is George Carlin does provide a solid solution for all of this chaos in the world. The bad news is you won't like it. So let's dive into some of the most iconic George Carlin material, starting off with something a little more lighthearted and agreeable. Stuff.
Have you noticed that their stuff is shit and your shit is stuff?
George Carlin's bit about stuff focuses on our obsession with material belongings. And while this may seem menial on the surface, our accumulation and attachment to our stuff has drastically changed modern civilization.
Absolutely. Everybody has a fucking phone now. Everybody wants the best car. Instagram has absolutely rotted their fucking brain out of their skull, and everybody thinks that you need to have the best stuff in order to look cool. And I'm not talking about people probably in our chat that is like, you know, probably just like living their life and probably doesn't have like, you know, probably doesn't even want a fucking Ferrari and shit, but a lot of people obsess and dream over that stuff. He swears a lot and takes a vaguely populist slant so people think he's wise and badass. No, because he shits on the public. If a populist would be absolutely telling the people to revolt and that you should push back against the, you know, the machine and stuff, he just says it how it is. And it's fine to disagree. Fine, like, I don't care if you like him or not, but I'm just saying, I don't think he's a populist in any case. He shits on everyone. And plus, he shits on both political, like, stances. Like, it doesn't really matter.
Life for some people often revolves around managing all of our stuff and where to keep it.
Everybody's got to have a little place for their stuff. That's all life is about. That's the meaning of life. That's all your house is. It's a place to keep your stuff. If you didn't have so much goddamn stuff, you wouldn't need a house. That's all your house is. It's a place to keep your stuff while you go out and get more stuff. Sometimes you got to move. You got to get a bigger house. Why? Too much stuff.
Now, obviously, our homes provide us with shelter from storms and invasion, they help maintain a livable, consistent climate, and they provide a place for family and friends to gather. But homes have quickly turned into a glorified storage unit. Not to mention the storage unit industry generating $23 billion in annual revenue, which in and of itself is proof on—
You want to know what happens with people that put shit into storage? They buy more shit for their house. I saw this happen with some friends of mine that lived basically like from house to house. You want to know what happens? They can't get to the shit in the back and they have to go and buy the shit that's in the back because they don't want to get the stuff out of the storage, and then they get more shit and they double stuff, and yeah, like it's just, yeah.
How much we complicate our lives just by trying to manage all of our belongings.
Sometimes you go on vacation, you gotta bring some of your stuff with you. Can't take all your stuff. You gotta take a smaller version of your stuff. Get in a hotel room and you put away your stuff. That's the first thing you do in a hotel room is put away your stuff. Hey, we got more places than we got stuff. We're gonna have to buy more stuff.
Now, obviously, you should not let material things control your life. And when you are more selective with the things that you decide to indulge in, not only will you have less to manage, but you will appreciate those things even more. Because we can all agree that it's nice to have nice things. I, for one, appreciate expensive camera equipment, various options of sneakers, and of course, quality headphones. Plus, Black Friday is coming up, and we all love getting a great deal. For the sponsor of today's video, Raycon, you get a great deal every day of the year. They're doubling down on their amazing value and offering my viewers up to 30% off site-wide this Black Friday.
Wow,
their latest model of the everyday
Friday.
earbuds include plenty of new features that make them a must-have. For example, they now feature a 32-hour battery life, active noise cancellation, and multi-point
32
connectivity that
hours?
lets you pair with 2 devices at once.
That's crazy
These are the
work,
perfect
Chad.
everyday earbuds, whether you are just relaxing at home, going for walks, or trying to get some work done. I've also been loving the protective case covers. They come in lots of
That
cool
looks like a
colors
ball
and support
sack.
wireless charging. You can get 90 minutes of battery with just 10 minutes of charging. It's time to save big for Black Friday. Go to buyraycon.com/PatrickCC today to get up to 30% off site-wide. That's right, you'll get up to 30% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/PatrickCC.
Raycon.
Censorship has been a particularly large talking point over the past few years, and Carlin's take on the subject over 50 years ago remains incredibly relevant today. In his most famous—
Crazy. 50 years ago. When was that? The 1980s? Yeah, that's kind of before everything started kind of like falling apart. That's when it started falling apart. 70s? God, the 70s were still pretty like quiet in terms of like people being restless and annoyed. Yeah, people didn't really go against the government, or like there were like obviously like hippies happened in the 70s too, but that was like when it kind of like was like reverberating right at the beginning. I remember a long time ago, a lot of people used to call things everything was gay and everything was so lame and gay and this and that, and now everybody doesn't say it anymore. Yeah, like it's evolving, man. Yep, everything retarded too. People don't really say that anymore.
facetious, he then gets a little more serious when discussing the hypocrisy of our culture. Specifically on television, where sometimes we're allowed to say certain words, and then sometimes those same words are considered inappropriate.
There are a lot of these little two-way double
For discovering these prohibited words ended on a very specific list of 7.
Well, we have more ways to describe dirty words than we actually have dirty words. They call them bad words, dirty, filthy, foul, vile, vulgar, cursing, cussing, swearing, and all I could think of was suck a motherfucker.
The ironic thing is, I still can't say these words on YouTube today.
Yeah, you literally have to either censor yourself or risk getting flagged. Yep. Yep.
Nor can I just let a clip of George Carlin saying them run. But the reason why I can't say them today and why George couldn't say them then is slightly different. The reason why George couldn't say the words was because he had to abide by the laws of the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC. The FCC regulates interstate and international communications by radio, television, wire, satellite, and cable in all 50 states. The FCC defines and prohibits obscene, indecent, and profane content, which they say is not protected by the First Amendment. Profane content includes grossly offensive language that is considered a public nuisance.
They even tried to give Family Guy back in 2001 or 2. Yeah, and this is what happens when you have an entity dictate things that they may seem inappropriate to them, and it doesn't matter if it's funny to a large majority of people, if it breaks the rules for them. And sometimes you can sometimes they will bend the rules for you, depending. Yeah, Family Guy got canceled multiple times early on, and I thought, now looking back on it, their jokes are pretty tame. They're such buttholes.
The FCC's strict rules is what inspired George's bit in the first place. It also got him arrested for performing it. In July of 1972, George Carlin was on stage at Summerfest in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, opening for musician Arlo Guthrie. George was warned prior to him going on stage that if he performed his 7 words you can't say, he would be arrested. And in true George Carlin fashion, he performed it anyway. When he walked
That is true hippie style right there. You fuck the government!
Walked off stage, a local police lieutenant was waiting to arrest him for using profane language. Fortunately, after his arrest, the charges were dropped as he was protected by his first constitutional amendment right.
I think children need to hear those words the most because as yet they don't have that access. It's adults who are locked into certain thought patterns. But as I say, the idea of the material is to show the 7 words you can't say on television. Out of 400,000 words in the English language, there are 7 that right now I can't say to you that you couldn't run on the air, and yet they're merely words. And so I use them in explaining that and in making fun of that.
It's not protected by the First Amendment, but wait, it is. It's because they tried to charge him for doing it in a public setting, and I guess where it falls in is that it was broadcasted, or I would suspect it was broadcasted, and they tried to get him on that, but because he's a citizen of the United States, you're allowed to do that. It's not on TV. I don't know. I think it was filmed, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I wasn't there. I don't know the detail of it.
Situation. And so I find it kind of funny to be hassled for using them when my intention is to free us from hassling people for using them.
But George's material would actually be the center of some litigation that got all the way up to the Supreme Court. In October of 1973, George would release his 5th album titled Occupation Fool. On that album was another very similar joke titled Filthy Words. Since George was a renowned comedian, comedy radio jockeys were excited to play his new material for their listeners. Well, on October 30th, 1973, East Coast station WBAI-FM warned their listeners that they were about to play Carlin's material that was potentially offensive. CBS executive John Douglas listened to the broadcast alongside his 15-year-old son as they drove home. Appalled, he filed a complaint with the FCC a few weeks later over the language aired in the middle of the day.
Buddy, you were in the car. Just turn off the radio. You dumb bitch. Yeah, you dumb fuck. You lunatic, the fuck. A few weeks later, it's like, yeah, my son was really affected by this. Okay.
In February 1975, the FCC issued a declaratory order that determined the broadcast to be indecent and threatened to impose sanctions on the Pacifica Foundation, who owned the radio station, over any subsequent complaints. Pacifica challenged this finding in court, and in 1977, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit ruled in favor of the broadcast entity by a 2-to-1 margin, sending the case all the way up to the Supreme Court. And surprise, surprise, the feds won in Supreme Court. But But the FCC has almost
fuck the feds.
No impact on our media today. Nearly everyone in America consumes their media almost entirely on the internet, whether that be independently produced social media content or subscription-based services like Netflix that are not bound by the regulations of the FCC. And while it is,
which is kind of insane to me, and again, YouTube Kids really proved that having a Wild West specifically for children is not a good idea. I think that, like, having specifically catered, like, not cartoons, chat. I'm talking about, like, actual, like, toddlers watching YouTube videos on YouTube Kids, which is supposedly, like, YouTube but for children, and they see explicit weird shit on there, and nobody can file a complaint because YouTube isn't, like, you know, underneath the FCC, so, like, they never can do anything about it. Yeah, like Elsa Gate and, like, Coco Melon and all that crap. Yeah, it's just, like, they can't do anything about it, and that's where I think, like, they really fucked up. It's gonna be a wild ride in the next, like, 30 years.
It's good that the government is not necessarily controlling our speech or interrupting our content. Platforms like YouTube, which are more popular than TV, arguably restrict our speech even more.
Yeah, because they dictate the rules. They took it into their own hands to dictate what the rules are, which is still bad, I think. Like, they can just say, oh, this is inappropriate, sorry. Your entire channel's gone. Your way of making income? Out of here, just banned without question. And if you try to do that again and we find out, you're gonna get sued.
My personal YouTube partner manager once said to me in an email, we have different and oftentimes more strict policies and standards than TV. The reason why I can't say George Carlin's 7 words is because YouTube will age restrict my content, meaning that users over the age of 18 are forced to sign in to be able to watch. So instead of clicking the sign in button, a lot of them just choose to skip the video. Now on the surface, this seems like a logical solution that even I could agree with, but there are some flaws. Although they are getting better at this, YouTube historically did not consider the context in which your inappropriate language is said. So if I'm just reading inappropriate words that someone else said to give you the most accurate information, or if I'm just saying them objectively from a documentary perspective or educational perspective, like I was with Carlin, that is not considered different than me just throwing around a bunch of swear words and speaking like a sailor. And just like Carlin said, context is everything.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with any of those words in and of themselves. They're only words. It's the context that counts. It's the user. It's the intention behind the words that makes them good or bad. The words are completely neutral. The words are innocent. I get tired of people talking about bad words and bad language. Bullshit. It's the context that makes them good or bad.
But perhaps the most frustrating...
But then you could also argue that context doesn't matter, because then people can make up their own context out of it as well. And that's why the FCC has a hard time dealing with people. It's like... There's a really good example of this too. South Park made a video game called Fractured Butthole, but they couldn't put Fractured Butthole on the video game, like, title because it's a swear word and it's a bad word. So what they did is they made it fractured but whole, as in, like, the whole piece. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, that's clever, and they passed it, and it's like, you're so dumb, man. Like, it still sounds like the word, so it's like, it's clever. It's very clever, but really funny, but also really dumb, and shows how the FCC and whatever, like, the video game, like, approval system is dumb as fuck.
Frustrating part about words you cannot say is that it's always changing.
You can't be afraid of words that speak the truth. Americans have trouble facing the truth, so they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it, and it gets worse with every generation.
Today you can find an abundance of information about words that are now considered offensive or inappropriate.
Oh my god, don't get me started on this shit. There are so many words that people used to say, and it's just like, spooky, spooktober. It's now considered racist, even though the context, again, chat, remember what he said about context? He said spooktober is now considered a slur because the word spooktober, the first part, if it's taken out of context, is racist. But for some reason, these dumb, stupid people on Tumblr and like Twitter said that it's racist and it's like supposed to be bad. What? No, seriously, this is 100% a real thing. It's a slur that people used a long time ago, but nobody even uses that slur anymore. So now they use that to say that Spooktober or spooky is racist. It's an old school slur. Chat, look it up. Literally, like spook slur. It's a racial slur against black people from World War II, apparently. Yeah. An undercover agent or spy. See, I didn't even know what the context was. I just know it from like history and stuff, but like, yeah, apparently that's what it was.
Appropriate. And one trend that you'll notice is that words that are deemed as inappropriate tend to get replaced with words that are less specific and a little more open for interpretation. Here are some examples. Instead of wheelchair bound, you should say wheelchair user.
I'm not mentally handicapped. I'm mentally deficient. Like, why are we doing this censorship? It's so weird, man.
Instead of homeless, say people experiencing homelessness. Instead of master bedroom, because of its ties to slavery, say primary bedroom.
Are you shitting me? I had no idea. I still call it like the master bedroom, like where my parents sleep, right? Like that's the master bedroom because your parents sleep in it. We're really making shit up now. I don't even know. Is this real? Is this actually why? Hold on, wait. Dude, master bedroom translated into Russian is Glavная spальня, and that means like grand bedroom. My brain is what?
Now, clearly defined and specific language is faster and more efficient to use, but it can often be less generally accurate. Like if you refer to just anyone in a wheelchair as crippled, that might be accurate for someone with muscular dystrophy, but not necessarily accurate for someone who just broke both of their legs and they're in the
This reminds me of like people making their entire personality revolving around either their disability or their race, religion, or like skin color. No one cares. 99% of the people that are like bound or like wheelchair users, they don't care. They just want to be like normal people. And treated as normal people that just happen to have like bad legs or something. Like, why are we doing that shit? Oh, there's another thing with like white and blacklist and like tech. Like white and blacklisting in tech, yeah. Unreal Engine 5 or 4, they removed white and blacklist and made it different words because they said it was racist.
process of healing. Saying disabled instead of crippled is more open, and it's also not as permanent. Someone could be forever disabled, or they could be disabled just right now. And while most people can get behind this logic, it becomes nearly impossible to keep up with the droves of new words that are now considered offensive or outdated. Here are some words and phrases that some people believe are outdated and offensive. Brainstorm, because it was originally
Oh my god, my fucking nail polish just flew off the floor. I'm actually floored. What is wrong with you? Why?
Used to describe what people perceived as violent maniacal outbursts, a sudden and severe attack of mental illness, epileptic seizures, and more.
I went to college and I never thought that once in my entire life. Are you shitting me? You are fisting me in my ass if you think that's actually unironically what people think when they think brainstorm. You are actually out of your fucking mind. What, does this sound made up? I don't know, but sometimes like people will do this. Like, chat, there's some people that don't think that the whole Spooktober thing is like not real. It's real though.
Grandfathered in. The term originates with the practice of allowing voters in southern states easier voting conditions if they had a grandpa who had voted before 1867. But it was a trick, because at the time, black voters' grandfathers were slaves and could not vote. Long time no see.
I can assure you there's probably countries that have the same turn of phrase that's existed for thousands of years. It is not related to like slavery or anything like that. It's probably not even real, man. Hold on. Who said this? That's what it used to mean, Christ, these people in hobbies? Yes, absolutely. Look up the changes to the word shell shock to post-traumatic stress disorder. The word has been reduced to a string of words that lessen its impact. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, PTSD is still taken pretty seriously, I think, but like, I don't know. Shell shock was like a really old term because they didn't know what PTSD was, so I don't know if that's the same thing. Yeah, this is insane. Brainstorm is offensive now. Chat, I'm going bananas.
Is a phrase that Native Americans would say to early settlers in broken English. No can do is a similar phrase that is said to derive from Chinese broken English. So if you say these phrases today, it can be interpreted as mockery, but it could also be interpreted as efficient. Why say more words when few words do trick?
I like this guy. He watches The Office, huh?
Some of you are genuinely baffled at this and think it's ridiculous. Some of you are like, that's interesting, and I will refrain from using those words and phrases. And
changes constantly.
Those lists even change from day to day. Some people on Friday night, about 2 or 3 words. Sunday morning, goddamn, there's like 20.
On YouTube, you're not allowed to, like, criticize women doing stupid shit, apparently. If you say, if you jokingly say something like, this dumb bitch did this, that can be seen as putting down the gender. Because a female in the frame could be seen as you being derogatory towards females. Yeah, like, YouTube can flag you for almost anything.
27 words. These are the same people 2 days later. Different list.
And even if you think you're doing the right thing and you're saying the right words today, one day, they'll probably turn around and become offensive. This is known as the Euphemism Treadmill. For example, neurodivergent is a present-day umbrella term that is acceptable to categorize ADHD, learning disabilities, and
what if this becomes a slur eventually? Like, that could be seen as a fucking umbrella term for people who are mentally ill. I could see that happening one day. Like, some crazy guy makes like a meme, or like they make it like a toxic word.
Anxiety disorders. It's less specific, and people seem to prefer that. But now kids have turned that word into an insult by calling those types of people neuros. So give it some No, shut up. There's no way. Neuros? Like Neurosama? Neuros insult. No, I can't find anything on that chat. This can't be real. No, Neurosama, it's over. Time, and the word neurodivergent will be considered offensive because the people who called them neuros ruined it. So with all that being said, what's the solution?
Neuros.
Where does the line get drawn? Well, there is no solution, which is why George Carlin famously ended his euphemisms bit like this.
I'm telling you, some of this language makes me want to vomit. Well, maybe not vomit,
Makes me want to engage in an involuntary personal protein spill.
George's material is, in the truest definition of the word, timeless. I find it incredible how this joke in 1990 is more accurate today than it was then.
Everywhere you go now, there's some dick with a camcorder, and he is going to tape everything. Doesn't anyone in this country just stop and look at things anymore? Is that just a strange notion? Does experience have to be documented and brought home and saved on a shelf? Are people's lives so bankrupt they sit at home looking at things they already did?
I'm not sure if George could have predicted it.
That is that's crazy on point, man. People fucking thought he was like talking about like people recording like television shows or like maybe like their kids. I don't know, man. It's so up to interpretation, but it's kind of crazy to think about, like, what if he was, like, actually right about the Instagrams, the TikToks?
It getting this bad, but today we spend probably 90% of our time watching things we already did, living our lives in this perpetual state of planning things so we can document them to look back on. And although Carlin's material feels like he is speaking your exact frustrations, sometimes people feel like he takes things too far, especially in regards to his views on children.
Children. It's all you hear in this country. Children. Help the children. What about the children? Save the children. You know what I say? Fuck the children.
Well, people do so more nowadays. You know, they'll sit fucking celebrities and stuff. You know, so I know Drake.
Your children are overrated and overvalued. You've turned them into little cult objects. You have a child fetish, and it's not healthy. Don't give me that weak shit. Well, I love my children. Fuck you. Everybody loves their children. Doesn't make you special. What I'm talking about is this constant mindless yammering in the media, this neurotic fixation that somehow everything has to be revolved around children. It's completely out of balance. First of all, they're not all cute, okay?
I've always said this, you only find kids that are cute that are related to you. Every other child, probably, unless it's like an exceptional person who, like, I don't know, just likes taking care of kids, like kindergartners or whatever, like teachers and stuff. But even then, some of them hate some of the kids, or to some degree. I genuinely think that people don't actually like kids, they just tolerate them.
In fact, if you look at them close, some of them are rather unpleasant looking.
Yeah!
And a lot of them don't smell too good either.
Yeah, they smell bad.
The little ones in particular seem to have a kind of urine and sour milk combination or something. Second
Bro, I took this is such a sidetrack, but I took a walk with my dog and I went into a neighborhood, like a normal neighborhood. I could smell that they had kids, like, in the house when I walked past, because it smelled like sour milk and like vomit. It was so gross, and as soon as I like went past that house in particular, it stopped smelling on the street. I was like, what the hell? Do they have their windows open or something?
Not all children are smart and clever. Got that? Kids are like any other group of people. A few winners,
powder.
a
Yeah,
whole lot of losers. There are a lot of loser kids out there who simply aren't going anywhere, and you can't save them all.
George does go on to describe the overprotection of children, which has without a doubt gotten more prevalent in modern
helicopter parenting.
However, he does take this to extreme lengths, suggesting that we just let kids do whatever they want with a survival of the fittest type justification.
You gotta let them go, you gotta cut them loose, you gotta stop overprotecting them because you're making them too soft. For one.
And the other thing is that, I don't know if he touches on this, but participation trophies. I was in school when they started doing that. I think like maybe like middle school or something. And I noticed that. I was like, why the fuck are we doing this like participation trophy bullshit? I hate that thing. Like, why is this even a thing? Like, okay, you're number 1, 2, or 3, and then participation score. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Nobody cares about this shit, and it feels insulting if you're a kid that gets that.
There's too much emphasis on safety. child-proof medicine bottles and fireproof pajamas, child restraints and car seats and helmets, bicycles, skateboard, the baseball helmets. Kids have to wear helmets now for everything but jerking off. These
Oh my god, he's so vulgar, holy shit.
soft, fruity baby boomers are raising an entire generation of soft, fruity kids who aren't even allowed to have hazardous toys, for Christ's sakes. Hazardous toys. Shit, what about happened to natural selection? Survival of the fittest. Nature knows best. We're saving entirely too many lives in this country.
I think technology, what he doesn't know, obviously, because this is like in the past, what he doesn't know is that technology is already sorting people out. There's already been a kid that, you know, blew himself up because Daenerys Targaryen, the character AI, told him to, you know, fucking, you know, end himself. Yeah, like, it's already happening. We just don't have the restrictions for it yet, you know? Yeah.
All ages. Nature should be allowed to do its job of killing off the weak and sickly and ignorant people without interference from airbags and batting helmets.
George.
I genuinely think technology is going to replace that. We're what is it called? Safety proofing everything but technology. AI is going to kill a kid unironically one day. And people will be like, oh my god, I can't believe this happened. I'm like, I already saw it happening like in 2024 with character AI.
Can definitely go from insightful philosopher to angry old man who hates everything pretty quickly. Although what he is saying is probably objectively true, if we have the resources to make the lives of our people safer, why wouldn't we do that? Considering George has a daughter of his own, I'm sure he did not just throw her to the wind and hope for the best. Or maybe he did.
And it was a conversation my dad and I had never had, and we didn't have any real healthy conversation closure around it. But And I looking back on it now, I think sending him that script was my way of saying, hey, I have these feelings.
Right.
But this was one of the themes I wanted to work on in the book, was that here's this man who is the truth teller, like you said opening in the show. I mean, this is the man who conquered everything and was fearless and would talk about all the big stuff that our culture does not want to talk about on stage. And yet when it came to our family, we were very much the textbook dysfunctional alcoholic family that did a lot of walking on eggshells, didn't do a lot of intimate talking about the issues, and we all pretended that we were fine.
However, George wasn't entirely against the idea of...
That's actually really telling. Again, that's actually really telling. There's a saying somewhere, there's a saying that people who professionalize in certain careers, for example, like financial advisors or lawyers or doctors, they tend to not take care of their own problems. For example, like a financial advisor or a financial person who deals with other people's finances aren't good with their own money in their personal life. It's like, again, I don't want to like get into it, but like there's some people that I've met in my life where I'm like, damn, you're like a nurse, for example. I don't have a friend that's a nurse, but it's like, you're a nurse and you don't take care of yourself or your family health-wise, and you deal with people dying all the time. Isn't that kind of ironic? Yeah, like never buy a mechanic's car. Yeah, that kind of thing. It's so weird.
Doing right by our children.
You're a
In his
smoking
opinion,
doctor. Yeah,
one
exactly.
thing all parents should teach their kids how to do
It's a
is
common
detect
thing.
bullshit.
Much more important to teach children to question what they read. Children should be taught to question everything. Parents never teach their children to question authority because parents are authority figures themselves and they don't want to undermine their own bullshit inside the household. That's the biggest thing you can do for a kid. Tell them what life in this country is about. It's about a whole lot of bullshit that needs to be detected and avoided.
This definitely aligns with one of George's core philosophies, that Americans need to constantly assess how they are being lied to.
America's most profitable business is still the manufacture, packaging, distribution, and marketing of bullshit. And the sad part is that most people seem to have been indoctrinated to believe that bullshit only comes from certain places, certain sources. Advertising, politics, salesmen, not true. Bullshit is everywhere. Parents are full of shit, teachers are full of shit, clergymen are full of shit, and law enforcement people are full of shit. And always has been, from the Declaration of Independence to the Constitution.
Because humans are full of shit. And they're humans, they're not perfect, they're not robots.
Constitution of the Star Spangled Banner, it's still nothing more than one big steaming pile of red, white, and blue all-American bull. This country was founded by a group of slave owners who told us all men are created equal. Oh yeah, all men, except for Indians and women, right? Always like to use that authentic American language. Unelected white male land-holding slave owners who also suggested their class be the only one allowed to vote. Now that is what's known as being stunningly and embarrassingly full of shit.
One group of people that George Carlin feels like are full of it are people that claim they are going to save the planet.
We're so self-important. So self-important. Everybody's gonna save something now. Save the trees, save the bees, save the whales, save those snails. And the greatest arrogance of all, save the planet. What? Are these people kidding me? Save the planet? We don't even know how to take care of ourselves yet. We haven't learned how to care for one another. We're gonna save the planet?
George opens with the basic fact that over 99.9% of every species that have ever lived are now extinct, which is incredible because there are still anywhere from 2 million to 3 trillion species alive today. Pretty narrow gap there. George brings this up because it's entirely natural for a species to go extinct, and he claims it's nothing but human ego to feel the need to control and protect nature, such as us passing laws like the Endangered Species Act.
The other thing that pisses me off is when people are like, oh, well, if I, recycle plastic and stuff as a person, did you know that corpos are actually the biggest litterers, though? Like, unironically. It's insane, man! It's insane! I watched a whole documentary on outsourced medical, drugs that go into India, and they have factories there that are, American drugs being made there and then, shipped back to America in India. They shit up the cleaning water and ruin it and kill a bunch of animals, including people too. They get like cancers and stuff. And it doesn't matter because they're not shitting up in America. So like, who gives a fuck, right? Like, it's horrible. And then they were the ones preaching about saving the planet and how it matters to, like, be clean and reduce your carbon footprint. They're the ones shitting it up.
That prevented extinction in African elephants, black-footed ferrets, bald eagles, American alligators, and dozens more. Now, George's argument is fact-based, but again, what is the harm in trying to protect endangered species? If we have the time, resources, and support to help the survival of another living being, why wouldn't we? Plus, humans were often the direct cause of the eradication of another species. However,
and again, I do think that George Carlin, with how funny he is and this and that, he is playing an old angry man syndrome because that's what like sells. Nobody wants to hear him praising shit. That's the thing. People always shit all over and say, oh, he's like a miserable anti-establishment, blah, 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 like he's an old fucking anti-American. Shut the fuck up. I'm not anti-American. I make jokes about fucking how capitalism is ruining our society, which is what it should inadvertently is, because it's late-stage capitalism and no system is perfect, unfortunately. It's just not how human nature works. America is built on business owners, and fucking over everyone else. I'm sorry, it's just how it is. Sorry, broke the fourth wall, no politics. It's very soft, but like, you get my point. People don't want you to fucking talk about how wonderful the trees are outside as like a fucking comedian. That's why he's so popular. He's saying the truth, sure, but he's over-exaggerating because it sells.
However, it seems that George is not necessarily demonizing the noble work of these people, but rather the people who maintain this holier-than-thou attitude for their conservation efforts. Like the Yale School of Environment saying, the truth is we could survive without wild species, but they can't survive without us.
I'm tired of these self-righteous environmentalists, these white bourgeois liberals who think the only thing wrong with this country is there aren't enough bicycle paths. Environmentalists don't give a shit about the planet.
And those environmentalists and activists will fight you tooth and nail to defend their right to like environmentalism and saving the planet when they're literally doing the job of corpos without getting paid by the corpos. It's so cringe because they're inadvertently anti-establishment because, you know, fuck the corpos and shitting up the planet. But then they're doing the job for them by shitting on the average person for, like, leaving a plastic bottle on the ground on accident. That's what I have a problem with, personally.
Planet. They don't care about the planet. Not in the...
I respect the ones more that go against massive corporations and try to stop them from, like, mining on land and, like, ruining a water well for, like, Native American reserves. Because that's actually a massive corporation shitting up the environment for their own personal gain of, like, money and, like, resources. I don't find it, again, I wouldn't engage with it, but I respect it more than the environmentalist who's, like, freaking the fuck out that, like, I flush, like a fucking plastic bottle down the toilet or something. I don't do that, but I'm just saying as an example. Like, I'm not part of the problem, man. The entire fucking country of America doesn't produce this fucking, like, the populace of America does not produce the same amount of trash as all of the fucking factories combined in America. Just doesn't even come close.
Abstract, they don't. You know what they're interested in?
Like plastic
a clean
straws and
place
shit.
to live. Their own habitat. They're worried that someday in the future they might be personally inconvenienced. Narrow, unenlightened self-interest. There is nothing wrong with the planet. Nothing wrong with the planet. The planet is fine. The people are
George,
our culture of overconsumption is the problem, so technically we are the problem. Yeah, but who sells you the overconsumption? American corpos! We didn't used to have massive fat Borgies from McDonald's. McDonald's increased the size to make you fat so they could sell you more food! Not mad at you, by the way, just so we're clear. I'm not mad at you for saying that. You just brought on a very good point. That's why it's sick. The culture's fucked. The culture's the problem. America didn't used to be fat. Americans didn't just grow up randomly to be fat. They used to be like a normal, like relatively normal country that just kind of minded its own business. And then they realized they could make more off of money and like capitalism and all that fucking shit. By the way, again, God, I can't stress this enough. I ultimately don't give a fuck. I'm not an activist. It's just me. It's just me saying things. I don't hate America. I love America in my own way. I love being here. I just have problems with it, and that's fine. I'd have problems with any other country that I'd be living within because I live in the country. I had my own issues in New Zealand, trust me. I'm just saying, like, this is my little soapbox.
then goes on to describe how the planet has been through far more disaster than humans could ever cause.
The planet has been through a lot worse than us. Hundreds of thousands of years of bombardment by comets and asteroids and meteors, worldwide floods, tidal waves, worldwide fires, erosion, cosmic rays, recurring ice ages, and we think some plastic bags and some aluminum cans are going to make a difference? The planet isn't going anywhere.
You are gonna be fucked. If we all die, the planet keeps spinning, bro.
We are. We're going away. Pack your folks. We're going away.
A common argument against
That's what my parents always used to say. In my school, they started cramming really hard on environmentalism, and one day I came home and my parents just kind of sat me down like, Alana, you don't need to, like, pick up plastic bottles. Like, you can if you want to, but, like, if someone puts a gun to your head, you don't have to do that. The planet's gonna keep spinning. She might be hurting for a little bit. She might cough and sputter. She might cry a little bit because she's in pain. But ultimately, we will die. We will die on this planet, and then she'll keep spinning, and then more animals will come to replace us, and maybe new monkeys will form. That's ultimately what it is. I admire it, sure, if you want to go fucking collect plastic bottles and pick up trash. I always cheer on people that are picking up trash on the highway. I don't have the time to do it. I don't spit on him. I don't fucking call him pieces of shit. Like, you do you, man. That's awesome. If you want to help, go ahead. But ultimately, we are such a fucking, like, tiny little microscopic little bit. Even the factories and the corpos that shit up the planet, the planet's gonna revolt. That's just how it is.
Climate change or any sort of environmentalist legislation is that the planet will be fine, and that we are banning or heavily restricting modern day luxuries because some people believe that the impacts are hurting the planet. And in reality, yes, the planet will be fine, but humans have the ability to accelerate the extinction of humanity through their negligent treatment of the environment. However, the situation gets a little more complicated when learning that since 1988, just 100 companies have been responsible for 71% of global greenhouse gas emissions, or that one plane flight will emit more CO2 than the average person will in an entire year.
And people who fly private jet planes don't get taxed. Meanwhile, the average Joe Schmo has to pay an extra $1 for a cardboard bag, or bring their own bag that they have to pay $5 for, which is whatever. But, like, you get my point though, right? Like, it's kind of fucked up that we have to pay for the crimes of, like, giga celebrities.
But the majority of the blame gets put on individuals. You are constantly being shamed and pressured to reduce your carbon footprint, or massive rallies all over the world protesting and marching for a safer environment. This has led to
I mean, half my chat sits at home and probably doesn't leave the house more than like once a week to go get groceries, and even then some of them live in Europe where they have walkable cities. I ultimately think that your carbon footprint as a person in my chat is probably so fucking minimal, it's laughable.
To incremental action like the ban on single-use plastic bags, which is no big deal and objectively better for all of the wildlife that are harmed by plastics.
Sure.
But it has led to bigger restrictions like the European Parliament's plans to ban combustion cars by 2035 and going all electric. Yet the dust that comes off brake pads is just
And what about the fucking lithium batteries that fucking power the electric? God damn it, man! What about the electrical cars and the stations and the lithium batteries? There's only so much lithium, and the lithium does damage to the environment. We're fucked either way. Pick a fucking poison, you piece of shit.
as harmful, if not more, than diesel emissions. And in 2021, 52% of all particle emissions came from tires and brakes. But we need brakes on all cars, even the electric ones.
No, we need no brakes. We slam into each other and then we go into the next car. Next question.
So while we are eliminating some problems, we are not even addressing the most important and harmful
all
ones.
ass, no
Plus,
brakes.
producing a lithium battery for an electric car emits over 70% more carbon dioxide than producing a conventional car. The mining process uses a lot of water, approximately 500,000 gallons per ton of lithium, destroying farmland and local environments. A lithium battery expert from the University of Chile says, like any mining process, it is invasive. It scars the landscape. It destroys the water table and it pollutes the earth and the local wells. This isn't a green solution. It's not a solution at all.
Take
No
your poison,
solution will
brother.
be perfect, and all will inevitably lead to more problems and draining more of the Earth's natural resources. But there is no doubt at all that massive corporations are polluting the Earth far more than the 8 billion individuals. And while some conservationists or environmentalists act like they are doing their noble deed for the good of the planet, this act to be more green, the reality is that they are doing it to protect human civilization. Or maybe not, or maybe it's all about money and power and protecting the interests of massive corporations. But Carlin is right. The planet will be fine. Humans will face the ramifications of our own actions.
See, I don't worry about the little things. Bees, trees, whales, snails. I think we're part of a greater wisdom than we will ever understand. It doesn't punish. It doesn't judge at all. It just is. And so are we. For a little while. Thanks for being here with me for a little while tonight.
Every now and again, you get a glimmer of hope from George. He once famously said, "Inside every cynical person, there's a disappointed idealist." And that idealist will come out from time to time. Like, for instance, Carlin is very anti-capital punishment in the form of the death penalty. Kind of. Carlin makes fun of how America deals with it and punishment in general. He begins by pointing out the absurd contradictions America does in valuing the sanctity of life while also endorsing capital punishment, which does have some backing lacking in the fact that the United States remains one of the few developed nations that still practices capital punishment,
That's
with
true.
27 states maintaining the death penalty as of 2024.
In this country now, there are a lot of people who want to expand the death penalty to include drug dealers, drive-bys, gang shootings. They're not afraid to die. Death penalty doesn't mean anything unless you use it on people who are afraid to die. Like the bankers who launder the drug money.
Or dare I say, the producers and manufacturers of these horrible drugs. No matter what the crime is, assault, drug dealing, murder, etc., research supports that the death penalty is not an effective deterrent for these crimes.
Forget the dealers. You want to slow down that drug traffic, you got to start executing a few of these f***ing bankers. White, middle-class, Republican bankers. I'm not talking about soft American executions like lethal injection.
He's
I'm
going
talking about
after everyone, first
crucifixion,
liberals,
folks. And I'd go a little
those
further.
damn
I'd crucify people
Republicans.
upside down and naked. I'd have naked upside-down crucifixions on TV once a week at halftime of the Monday Night Football game.
Dude, Asmongold made an analogy for fucking having gladiatorial blood sports. If it was legal, people would still go. Dude, Asmongold's gonna turn into this in like 60 years. Sorry, not 60, probably like 40 years. Dude, he's right. Like, I know people are like, oh my god, he's just so miserable. He's like saying dumb shit. It's like, I don't know, man. He kind of sounds like
The Monday Night Crucifixions.
Yeah!
You'd have people tuning in don't even care about football. You start nailing one white banker per week to a big wooden cross on national TV, you're going to see that drug traffic begin
He's got the same M shape too for the balding.
to slow down pretty
Maybe he is
quick.
Asmongold.
Quick. You won't even be able to buy drugs in schools and prisons anymore.
If you haven't noticed by now, there
When
is
did
something ever
George
present in
Carlin
Carlin's
die?
routines. He tends to punch up. He targets powerful institutions, societal structures, government, organized religion, and the media, exposing how they manipulated and exploited ordinary people. He did not like the idea of punching down or joking on marginalized groups, or as he calls them, underdogs. He expressed this very clearly while critiquing the stand-up routine of comedian Andrew Dice Clay.
It's not a criticism so much, but his targets are underdogs. And comedy traditionally has picked on people in power, people who abuse their power. Women and gays and immigrants are kind of, to my way of thinking, underdogs. And, he ought to be careful because he's Jewish. And a lot of the people who want to pick on these kind of groups, the Jews are on that list a little further. You got women, gays, gypsies, blah, 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 and then suddenly you find Jews. And
You can't say the word gypsy anymore either.
Obviously, he should do what he
so
wants.
long ago, man.
Why does he get away with it, do you think, then?
Well,
We
because
have never laughed at jokes about the
Well, he's
poor.
appealing. I think he's appealing largely. I think his core audience are young white males who are threatened by these groups. I think a lot of these guys aren't sure of their manhood because that's a problem when you're going through adolescence. Am I really? Could I be? I hope I'm not one of them. And the women who assert themselves and are competent are a threat to these men. And so are immigrants in terms of jobs.
Carlin's take here aligns with much of the criticism towards popular comedians today. It seems like every comedian now combines social commentary and their political ideologies into their stand-up acts, which often resorts to them making jokes at the expense of vulnerable or marginalized groups, more specifically the LGBTQ community. And we have seen this nauseating cycle time and time again where a comedian makes a cheap joke at that community, then they get backlash online, and everyone with a podcast starts citing free speech and artistic—
Hold the fuck up. Dave Chappelle did not deserve to get fucking shit on. Excuse me?
freedom and how comedians can't joke about anything anymore, which has then resulted in a bunch of comedians just resorting a bulk of their material to talking about political correctness.
I don't think it was a cheap shot. I mean, okay, I don't really care. Like, I'm just watching the video. I don't think he did anything wrong. I watched it.
And cancel culture in comedy, when 99% of the time they just have hacky material that was inspired by out-of-touch Facebook users. But make no mistake, Carlin was not on your team, but he wasn't on theirs either, because even though George was defending marginalized groups, he was very clear that he hated all groups of people.
I love people as I meet them one by one. People are just wonderful as individuals. You see the whole universe in their eyes if you look carefully. But as soon as they begin to group, as soon as they begin to clot, when there are 5 of them or 10, or even groups as small as 2, they begin to change. They sacrifice the beauty of the individual for the sake of the group. I decided it was all under the control of groups now, whether it's business, religion, political people, or what, and I would distance myself from wishing for a good outcome. Let it do what it's going to do, and I'll enjoy it as an entertainment.
And I'll reflect.
This is one of George's foundational beliefs.
Facts.
So don't get offended when he talks about Americans, because he's not necessarily talking about you, he's talking about all of us.
Yeah, well, he's American too. I'd obviously hope that if he was still alive, I would hope that he could still say, like, yeah, I'm American, I consume this.
People are stupid.
I'm like this.
It's pretty fundamental.
I would hope.
People are stupid
I would hope.
and
I don't
easily
know.
manipulated. And the American people are really pretty stupid. And I don't mean these people here tonight. This is a different group. You know, you hear this canard that politicians roll this one out a couple times a week. The American people are far more intelligent than they're given credit for. And I think that's 180 degrees out of whack. I think they're far less intelligent than they're given credit for. H.L. Mencken said, no one ever went broke underestimating the intelligence of the American public. And it's true. The things that, and if you need proof, you just listen to talk.
Bro, go work in retail or customer service. No. People are so fucking dumb. And I don't mean like just in America. I worked in New Zealand too. People are so unbelievably dumb. Especially with technology, like depending on your age, but even with growing up with technology, I've been mind blown by people in their 20s not being able to like know how certain things function in a computer, or like doing certain things that I thought I was like, what the fuck? Like, what do you mean? We grew up with that. We grew up with this shit, man. There's no excuse. It's not like you're a boomer that doesn't know how to fucking use a smartphone. Like, I will give them a leniency to that. Like, they didn't grow up with that. Like, you're in your 20s and you don't know how to use a computer, like, properly?
Radio, read the letters to the editor, listen to the answers when someone with a microphone approaches someone. They said, who is the most trusted person? Who do you trust the most in this country? And Walter Cronkite.
I don't fucking trust anyone. Trust no bitch. You won't get disappointed. Words to live by.
This poll, people said, Walter Cronkite, this is a newsreader for a commercial network. But the interesting thing is who came in second? Betty Crocker, okay? Betty Crocker, a fictional person, a lady from the front of a cookie box, the second most trusted person.
Throughout Carlin's career,
Betty Crocker, for those that don't know, Betty Crocker is a cake powder mix, cookie mix brand that you buy in a box. Maybe the UK has it too, but in America, it's like a mixing thing, and you just like make cake out of it, and that's it, like, or cookies, and it's like a pre-made thing. That's a fictional person that came from like the 1950s of a woman that like took a persona and like wrote back to like people for like cooking advice, and it became like a brand. That's actually mind-blowing.
He's made it abundantly clear that he believes the average person is extremely manipulated, and he believes it starts at childhood.
For instance, hell and angels, okay?
What?
These are very primitive. They get you when you're little, and they tell you there's a God. And if you can make people believe, I believe this, if you can make someone believe that there's an invisible man living in the sky who's watching everything you do and keeping count of everything you do, which is good and which is bad, then you can make that person believe anything after that. Land of the free.
I will say something. I will not go into the religious shit, but I do think that some people need a fucking moral compass, like some sort of dread. Some people inadvertently are so dumb they kind of need it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna say it. It's like the supermarket trolley thing. Some people will not return the trolley and leave it in the middle of the parking lot because there's no one to tell them not to fucking do it. Like, some people just don't function normally. Like, you know, they can't think. Like, I'm sure there's atheists that, like, return trolleys, right? But some people just, they don't want to, like, behave in a normal society, in a normal fashion, if it doesn't, like, it's such a thing to go into, but like you get the gist of it. Like I just think that some people need that kind of thing, like a moral code or like an invisible man to them that just kind of tells them what to do. Yeah, I need like returns, like.
Home of the brave. The press is fair and impartial. Justice is blind.
I'm assuming he's an atheist.
Your vote is important. The United States government is on your side. The army is here to keep the peace. The police are on your side. The illusion of choice. They were led to feel free by the exercise of meaningless choices. For instance, important things, not too many choices. Unimportant things, ice cream flavors. What do you want? We got 31. Got the flavor of the week, got the flavor of the month. But political parties, we're down to 2.
Towards the end of his comedy career, George held back less and less. In what seemed to be his last-ditch effort to fully pull the veil from your eyes, to finally get you to understand what America truly stands for, he performed his most profound material called The Big Club.
You have owners. They own you.
This was very, like, eye-opening. If you were young or young enough, maybe like, I don't know, 18, and you saw this kind of blew your brains out. Like, whoa, what? I don't get it.
They own
Doomer
everything.
killed
They own
for
all the
doomering.
important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls.
The owners George is referring to have control over almost every aspect of our
This was blackpilling before blackpilling on YouTube was even like in its infancy. Like, let's be real.
Society, from government
He's
to media,
100%
and that they use
real.
this power to shape public opinion and limit real choices. Approximately 90% of US media was controlled by just 6 major conglomerates.
Wow,
AT&T,
really?
CBS, Comcast, Disney, News Corp, and Viacom. So the 6 people who are the
Viacom,
top
ultimately
decision
evil.
makers at each of these companies effectively control 90% of all information out there. Additionally, just looking at the wealth distribution in America will make you realize just how powerful the rich are. The bottom, second, middle class, and upper middle class control just 30% of the total wealth of the nation,
That's
whereas the
disgusting.
top 20% and 1%ers hold a total of $133 trillion.
And it's become bigger, I think, right? Am I reading this graph wrong? Top 20% gone down, top 1%. Yeah, the top 1% became larger. Yeah, okay, I am reading this correctly. Sorry, my brain's a little bit cooked after a bit of streaming. Yes, more Miriam means more. Okay, yeah.
However, George says this is all by design. He says the country's problems, especially in areas like education, aren't due to
getting
incompetence, but
fucked.
rather strategically controlled by the elites to serve their interests. But since we have a democracy, we can elect politicians to be able to stop the control of these oligarchs. But George says otherwise.
I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you.
In
You're a
2016,
slave.
just 400 families and businessmen accounted for almost half the money raised in the presidential campaign. In 2024, more than 80% of all money raised was from people who donated more than $1 million. So you have to ask yourself, do the politicians care more about the few hundred people that are giving them millions of dollars, or you?
You know what they want? They want obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shit jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime,
No
and the vanity
promotions.
pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your
And he's saying this in like what, 2007, maybe 6? I don't know when this happened, but Social Security has absolutely dried up for older people. Yeah, this is 100% true.
retirement money. They want it back. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this place. It's a big club. And you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
Ultimately, George believes that our society doesn't change because Americans are too stupid to realize or don't care enough to fight it, which is exactly what the elites depend on.
In my personal opinion, I think it's because the circus is still going on. So Roman Colosseums and circuses existed because they placated the population. If we took away all the iPhones, all that fucking the TV, the entertainment, the video games, everything, I think that people would start noticing pretty quick because they would start, they would just start noticing. Yeah, breads and circuses. You gotta keep them happy. Take away McDonald's, all that crap. Like porn. Porn would be like really bad. Yeah, nobody's perfect, Chad. Again, I hate it when people like worship people and be like, "Oh my god, he's so base." Like you're allowed to disagree with George. Like I think some of his takes are like, you know, fucking angry men yelling at cloud kind of thing, but like ultimately he's not really wrong. Like, there is a grain of truth to it, and also he came from a fucked up family. Which is fine, again. Alright, we got a little bit more left, like 2 minutes. Let's do it. 3, 2, 1, boom!
That's what the owners count on. The fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue that's being jammed up their assholes every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream. Because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Now, since Carlin spent over half of his life analyzing this crazy, corrupt world and informing us about it, surely he would have thought of and come up with a solution to fix all of this.
You can't. I don't know, man. I know people always say, "Oh, what's the solution?" If you're gonna bitch about it all the time, like you fucking can't, man. You can't.
But instead, he gave up on the human species. And some people are disappointed to hear that. They looked up to George. They saw him as this genius philosopher who was rooting for the underdog. But he's just a guy that was trying to show you that he was thinking. He didn't ask for all that praise. You gave it to him.
I'm angry about, because anger implies that you have a stake in the outcome, that you care. Ooh. And I don't really care. I don't. I mean, it comes across as anger. I realized I didn't really care about this outcome on this planet. I didn't care what happened to the species. I think this is a species that was given great gifts and had great potential and squandered them. I think it chose poor ways of organizing itself, socially and politically. I think it made a wrong turn when it came to buying the okey-doke that the spiritual leaders gave, the high priests. We turned it over to the high priests and the traders. It's commerce and religion that have ruined and spoiled the potential of this species. And in this country, the same two things are true, but this country is writ large. And this country is the leader in the decay of the soul, if you will, just I use that metaphorically. It's just, I just don't care what happens to this country.
I mean, again, he's also perpetuated this rhetoric that sells for him. This is what I will criticize him for. I think when you start talking about it like for decades and decades and decades, of course he probably stopped caring a long time ago when people just stopped listening. Yeah, again, nihilism will eventually kill you because you become so miserable and encompassed in your own misery. He got older. Well, yeah, obviously. He also died of a heart attack. I mean, he's like, you know, fucking, what, how old? Like, probably like 70 or 80 years old.
I don't care. I don't give a
Yeah.
So, you know what? The only anger there is, and I recognize in my voice there. You know what that is? It's really a reflection of disappointment and disillusionment and being let down by my species. You know, we had such great possibilities, and they're not being realized. You know, they talk about poets and philosophers, and well, aren't there? Yes, there are. How much influence do they have? None. There are more people writing poetry in America than there are reading it. Imagine that. Well, I guess that's true. That feels
better. Wait, actually,
how
true.
Could you do that? That's why I usually always use the second person. You know, I talk about the audience and I say, how can you know what you did? You know, I don't say, you know what we did here in this country. I say, you know what you people did. I put it on them. It's not my problem.
I mean, you know what? He's a yapping and he's a talking. Yapping about nothing? What the fuck? I disagree. I don't think he was yapping about nothing. He's just like conceding the fact that he's giving up, and like nihilism is fine. You're allowed to be nihilistic. It's just that he's been immersed in it for probably like 40 years at this point. he's also a lot older than all of us. Like, I can't imagine there's like 70-year-olds that are like watching, or even like 65-plus-year-olds that are watching my stream. Maybe we're young. Maybe in 40 years we'll be like him, right?